Hey YouTube land, Tycanders here, welcoming you back to another action figure review, and today we are taking a look at yet another of Joytoy's Warhammer 40,000 Space Marines, but this is no ordinary Space Marine. This is Azrael, Supreme Grandmaster of the Dark Angels chapter. So, if you're unfamiliar with the Dark Angels, they are one of the first founding chapters, and they are also one of the ones that have a lot of secrecy around behind them. Azrael is also known as Keeper of the Secrets, and he has some interesting stuff. We'll just have a quick look at his box. So here it is with the Azrael name. You can see him with what comes in the contents. This is for 15 plus. It's 1/18 scale. You can see he here has the lion's helm on, and the Watcher of the Dark, or whatever the hell that weird little critter thing that comes with him, is holding the sheath for his sword, and you can see he's holding the sword aloft. Now I have mine with his hands the opposite way around, as in sword or weapon is on that side and the sword is on that side. His mastercrafted sword, which is also a named iconic item, if I remember correctly. Both his weapons are named. So if I can bring up some information about his gear. So his combi weapon, which is a mastercrafted combo weapon of a plasma gun and bolter, is called the Lion's Wrath, which is this thing. And his sword is called the Sword of Secrets, which is the mastercrafted power sword that he wields. So he has quite a lot of interesting stuff. His armor is Artificer armor, which is supposed to be ancient, which is kind of weird because if you know anything about the Primaris Marines, they're reasonably recent addition to the Space Marines within the last 3 to 4 years. They've been a new kind of side faction of Space Marines, in the sense that they're like an upgrade from the regular Marine. And I'll get into one of my favorite parts of this guy as well, which is interesting. But you can see on the box, it just showcases the figure on the back in different poses. We're going to move the box out of the way because he has quite a few bits and pieces to go through. So, getting on to his accessories, which is the mainstay of this. I will say, when you do get him, I just need to get his feet a little bit balanced better. There we go. If you are having balancing issues, you get this little bag, and it contains a stand for him. I'll pop it out of the packaging. Let's see which way is this thing in here. There we go. So, just like all the newer releases for Space Marines, and I think for the Imperial Guard, or any of this stuff really, you get one of these translucent clear bases. The only exception was the standard bearer for the Scions, the Tempest Scions. His base was unique in the sense that it had the peg for the figure, but it also had a indent for holding the banner. He was the only one that has a unique one so far that I'm aware of. More than likely, the standard bearer for the Cadians will have that base as well. I have not picked up any Cadians yet, unfortunately. I did get this guy recently, and the place I got him from also got all the Cadian stuff that was released, including the 2 cannons, their artillery cannons, which look fantastic, and 4 of the Cadian figures. Actually, it was 5 of the Cadian figures: the Power Fist Sergeant, the Lieutenant with the Power Sword, the Medic guy, the Comms guy, and I think there's one other guy, which I can't remember. And unfortunately, I couldn't afford any of them because they're quite pricey over here, and I had already committed to buying Azrael, or Azrael here. So he does come with a baggie which has his spare hands in it. So he comes with 2 punchy fists, a left and right punchy fist. He has a left and right trigger hand. Obviously his right trigger hand is on him because his left one is in my hand. And then he comes with a left and right grip hand. One of the grip hands is slightly bigger, but he does have an extra right grip hand which has a wider stance grip for some reason, and I'm not too sure why, because all his stuff, unless it's for him just to hold this thing, which is the sheath, maybe it's just for him to hold that, but he does have the extra wide grip right hand for some reason, unless that's a mistake. Let's consult the box. The box shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you should have in total 1, 2, left and right grab. Actually, yeah, interesting. The box doesn't show, actually, if I just bring the box in, which I didn't even notice this at first. So the box shows no hands on the figure for this big wide picture. Shows a set of hands here, so there's left, right, and an extra. But there's left, right, and an extra there, but he also has hands on him. So he actually has an interesting thing where he seems to have either an extra set of hands, or they just didn't include it in the picture. So, but that's for his hands. He does come with this weird little Goomba looking thing, which the miniature does have. It is actually off, like it's directly lifted from the miniature. So on the miniature you can have him holding the sword sheath, and what's interesting about the sword sheath, it's not a proper sheath. It doesn't, you can't actually put the physical sword in there. You just get a fake handle. So if you only want him holding the combi weapon, actually I'm assuming the extra wide grip hand is for him to hold the would make sense, the combi weapon two-handed. So you could probably outstretch this one a little bit more so you can have it on, you know, gripped, because if you look at the box, he's holding it left-handed. So he is a bit of, from the miniature's point of view, he is a southpaw apparently. If that's the terminology as they call people who write with their left hand, which I actually do myself. So he has that sheath with the bit on it. But what's also cool about this, and as you can see, he can actually hold the lion's helm. So on the miniature, when you're building the miniature, you have the option of having him with the helmet on or with the helmet off, and having this guy holding, either holding the sheath just like the miniature or holding the helmet just like the miniature, which is kind of cool. One thing I love about the lion's helm, this is like the iconic kind of Dark Angel helmet look with the big wings on the top of the helmet. The one cool thing about this helmet is it's not actually a Primaris helmet. It's actually a relic from the earlier Space Marine era. It is the Firstborn style helmet, which you don't see much of these days, except for specialized characters. I know Joytoy did a set of these. You could pick up, if you were like in Asia and you're in the Asian market, you could pick up a set of these to outfit on your Primaris Space Marines, and they did them in a couple of different chapters. But this is the first time I've actually seen one of these helmets, and it's relatively easy to pop it off. I thought it'd be a lot harder. It just pops right off, and there is a little click and it pops right in. So there's that. Now, one thing to note in regards to his backpack, his banner pole is actually a separate piece in the box. It's in the accessory tray. So I wouldn't recommend gluing it, because if you are trying to do stuff with him or store him, and if you want him to be stored on a kind of smaller shelf, it's easier to leave this not glued in place, but it does fit on him. His backpack, strangely enough, was actually on him in the box. Normally the backpacks are separate and you add them. I do love the detail with the skulls on the backpack. It is quite nicely done. His gun, which I can't remember the name of, which I mentioned earlier, is a combi plasma and bolter, or bolt rifle. So it has the bolt rifle magazine. Fortunately, this isn't removable. It kind of would have been cool if you could pop out the magazine for the bolter. but it is a combi weapon. You have the plasma gun part underneath and the kind of standard bolter look to the top. And then he does come with his sword of secrets. At least I could remember the name of that one. Oh yeah, the Lion's Wrath is the bolt gun. So he comes with a nicely done sword. Now, unlike some of the other power swords, of which I have the Terminator one here. The Terminator one, I'm not sure if you can see this on screen, but where the power nodules are, there's kind of a faint metallic blue, just to give that kind of power sword look. This one doesn't have it. It's just the kind of copper gold kind of plate of the power nodules for indicating that it's a power sword. But other than that, it is quite a nicely detailed piece of kit. He also comes with grumpy face. So he does come with this fairly sour, dour looking face. Whoops. As you can see, it's easy enough to swap it out. In fact, this is one of the best looking heads I've seen on some of the figures. In fact, like compared to the likes of the original Terminator, Chaos Terminators, the skin tone on them were just diabolical. I mean, they looked like they should have looked from the miniature point of view, but the miniatures should have had an extra bit of detailing. Now, for a size comparison, in fact, before I even do a size comparison, I'll just leave old Ragnar back here. We'll do a measuring of him with his line helm on and his banner pole. So to the very tippy top of his banner pole, in fact, I'm not even sure if I'm getting that in the screen. Let me just angle this up a touch without hopefully knocking over my thing. Hopefully you can see that, because I can't see my screen. So it is nearly 9 inches in height with the banner pole. If you were to use them without the banner pole, which you can, which is an option. I know it's technically not the way he's normally displayed. You can, and with the line helm head with the big pointy ear or winged helm on it, it does pop him up to the 6, is that 6.5? About 6.5 inch mark. So he does take up a little bit of retail space, especially with that banner pole in place. With the normal human head, or the normal marine head, let's pop that out. Oop, pop that back in. Put in grumpy face. For the normal grumpy face head and without the banner pole, it's up to the back of his actual backpack, which would be, the power plant of that is just round a little over 5 inches. So depending on which option you're going with for display purposes, you have options. So for articulation, actually, before I do articulation, we'll just do the quick comparison as I have them out and I drag them all the way out. Now I don't have too many of the chapter masters, or the Supreme chapter masters, if you want to call them that, Supreme leaders of this various Space Marine chapters. I didn't get Rogel Dorn. I don't have any of the actual Primarchs, so I don't have Robert Gilman, I don't have the Leon Johnson, who this guy is basically the Lion Johnson is basically this guy's boss. And I don't have Rogel Dorn, who was he the Imperial Fist guy? I think he's an Imperial Fist guy. I can never remember which one Rogel is. But those guys stand like there. You can't even see that, but like they're way higher. They're nearly as high as he is with the banner pole on for the figure. And I just haven't gotten around to picking one of them up. They're so expensive. And, well, they're expensive for one thing, and it's just space-wise is the other thing. That said, I do have other chapter masters, and unfortunately I do not have my Marinus Calgar with me. So I only have Ragnar Blackmane of the Space Wolves. So he'll have to do. Did they do a Dante? Is he still currently the Blood Angel guy? I know they did Mephiston, who I really like and I do want to get at some point, because and I don't collect Blood Angels, but again, I don't collect Space Wolves, but because he's a character model based on a character model. I do love his look because he has Frostmourne, the awesome looking chainsword, and then he has his standard little, it's supposed to be a mastercrafted bolt pistol, but he does stand a little bit on the shorter side because this guy was one of the first ones they did. So he uses, I think he's still using the 1.0 style body, but there's not much, like his plume does make him way bigger head-wise, but I think from like chest height, he's maybe a minimum. Just from me looking at him, I think he's a tiny bit smaller. It could be just my angle because I'm looking down at them from this angle and not across. So if I was looking across, he might be coming across as the same height. But like obviously you can see Ragnar's backpack, or his power plant backpack for his armor is way taller. It's actually quite a bit taller. The one thing is, shame is they didn't do a banner pole for Ragnar Blackmane. The original miniature did it have a double back banner pole? I remember one of them had like 2 banners coming off his backpack, and it looked pretty dope. But I think Azrael here is one of the first guys to have his more iconic backpack, because Azrael has actually been around quite a while. He's been around since at least, I believe, 3rd edition, and he's still currently the chapter master of the Dark Angels, or Supreme Grandmaster of the Dark Angels chapter. Now they do have, Dark Angels are one of the few guys that have two sub teams. So you have the Raven Wing, which is all fast attack, bikes, speeders, stuff like that, and then you have the Deathwing, which are all Terminators and thereabouts. They're all wearing the Terminator armor, which is basically akin to these. So they have Terminators that are a specific part of their chapter, unlike they don't follow the rules and regulations that Robert Gilman put down, where the first, was it the veterans of the first company became Terminators. Deathwing were their own thing, and so are the Raven Wing. But on to the figure's articulation, because I've been waffling on about the figure and not really showcasing him too much. So he does have the standard articulation of most Space Marines. His arms can go up. He does have the bicep swivel. He has the double jointed elbows. He does have the hinge on a peg for the wrist. He does have the head on the ball joint. As you can see, it was easy enough to pop out that head. He does have waist articulation. It is funny, he does have a teeny tiny waist under his main armor piece. It just looks like he has a really small waist, but generally it's hidden by the armor itself. You can't really see it too much, but it just looks funny. It looks a little off, but it doesn't really distract too well from the rest of the figure, because the main chunk of his armor hides it well enough. I think it's just there just to, if you are kind of looking in, it just looks like he has it. The robe continues. Speaking of which, he does have the kind of plug on pockets and holsters. Now there is no pistol for this. What I'm assuming is a bolt pistol. There isn't a corresponding bolt pistol, but if you have one spare off someone else, you can use it. It just wouldn't have that kind of iconic looking skull handle on it. He does have an interesting cape, or not cape, or robe. Now, I don't really have any of the other figures that have many robes on them. I do have some of the Black Templars, but their robes are more like tunics than robes. They have, like, it goes down the center of the armor. It doesn't flow out to the side like a cape, like the Dark Angels do. But the way they did this is interesting. So he does have the standard kind of body underneath, so he can kick forward. He does have the double jointed knees. He does have the iconic green armor of the Dark Angels. He has this cool looking studded leg, which is a throwback to the old Rogue Trader era Space Marines, where they had one studded shoulder pad, which looked pretty cool. So he does have this under tunic piece, and then he has this part of his cloak. Now, it is interesting. There is a hole on one side of the cloak and a peg on the other. It doesn't stick together too well. If you wanted to, you could glue it, but I believe the intention of it is that if you're moving the figure around and you want to get him into more dynamic poses, you leave it so he can actually do the dynamic poses, and it just pops open, and the idea is it's on both sides to give him a bit more maneuverability, and you just kind of peg it back together. It's not the best because it's rubbery material on rubbery material, so you're kind of fighting with it to plug it back in. You can get it done, but it can pop out quite easily, so it's just something to be wary of. It is a design aspect of the figure, and it is designed to give you a bit more leeway with the legs, and so he's not just a big chunk of block of plastic on the bottom of his legs. But there is that just to be wary of. Again, his shoulder pads are done like the 2.0s, where it is on a kind of a ring underneath the armor or under the shoulder. It's not like the old 0 or the 1.0 body where there's a dumbbell that plugged in. That was a good design, but it was problematic at best because they would pop out easily when you were moving stuff. So, but he is a really cool design figure. So enough of me waffling on. Just for another couple of size comparisons, I'll stand up his little Goomba here in front of him. This guy really looks like a Jawa for some reason. I mean, it's impossible for him to be human, because an average human figure will bring in, this is technically 1/18 scale, 1 to, or 3 3/4 inch scale Ian Malcolm, and we'll bring in Judge Hersey, however you want to pronounce her name. I know I butcher some names because I have a slight way of saying things incorrect, but I mean, she's around 4 inches in height, so she's pretty much supposed to be in scale with these guys. Again, Space Marines are supposed to be around the 7 to 8 foot tall, super enhanced humans, so they're like bigger, bulkier, wider, whichever way you want to call it. Bring in the old Terminator Sergeant here, who I have yet to do a review of, but it gives you an idea of the scale of Terminators to this guy. Do we have anyone else we can throw into the mix that would be of use? We do have one of the Chaos Terminators, one of the Black Legions. So we'll bring him in, and we'll just move Ragnar, or bring him back in as well, and put in the old Chaos Terminator. Unfortunately, I don't have one of the basic Marines hand to hand, so you can see the scale of them, but they are, these guys are taller than a basic Space Marine because they are basically their leaders, and for some reason when they do bigger Space Marines, or when Space Marines get, get more fancier armor, they tend to get taller for some reason, but it's beside the point. So all in all, he is a really cool figure. I picked this guy up from a local store called Dublin City Comics. They got in a bunch of the more recent releases. They seem to be getting in a lot of the recent releases. In fact, the Terminator I also got from them. And as I said, they have nearly all the Cadian stuff. They sold one so far, and I can bet most of them won't last. But they only got them in like maybe 2 or 3 days ago at the time of this recording, so I can bet most of them won't even last to the weekend. So I'm going to wrap this up here, and hopefully you might do some editing and throw some stuff in. Hopefully you might enjoy it. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers, guys.